Please give a very warm welcome to Tyler Mitchell. Tyler. We are so excited that Tyler is here today in Paris. It's our first Paris conversation. We've had endless conversations in many cities ever since we met in London first, actually on a photo shoot with Solange, and then many conversations in Amsterdam, where your first big museum show has just happened, of course, at the Serpentine in London, and now today in Paris. I wanted to ask you the same question we've actually asked all photographers today. We've asked Ming Smith, we've asked Joseph Koudelka, and now Samuel Foss. So it's about the kind of epiphany of the beginning, you know, how you came to photography or how photography came to you.
Thank you first for having me. Thank you, Paris Photo. And yeah, Hans and I, we've had a lot of conversations since we met on a photo shoot, which was a hilarious way to meet each other. I was shooting Hans, and I came to photography through skateboarding. Originally, I was a skateboarder when I was 13 or 14 years old, and basically, I wanted to make videos of my friends skating, uploading montages. I was watching a lot of Spike Jonze videos, YouTube videos, kind of like skateboarding in general has a really creative approach to editing and kind of uploading videos. Spike Jonze kind of made this amazing introduction video called Fully Flared, where these skateboarders were flying off of these stair sets, and then there were kind of explosions, these pyrotechnic explosions behind the skateboarders. And so I was really into filmmaking essentially through skateboarding. So first I was a filmmaker. I was making videos of my friends, uploading them to YouTube, and then DSLRs, you know, as they do now and at that time, had, you know, a switch button. You flip a switch, and you'd be making a video at one moment, and then you'd flip a switch, and it would have a photography mode. So that was how I got into photography. I would flip that switch, and I would be casually taking pictures of my friends skateboarding.
Now, the beginning, of course, you know, is with Spike Jonze, as you told me before. It has to do a lot with films. You made clips. But then, of course, we are here in Paris Photo, and so it would be interesting. You know, we've had two legendary photographers, actually three legendary photographers here this afternoon. Of course, Samuel Foss, Ming Smith, and also Joseph Koudelka. And if you think about their kind of legendary work, it sort of made me think, who were the legendary photographers who inspired you when you grew up? Who were the kind of, you know, because Panofsky says we often invent the future with fragments of the past. It doesn't kind of arrive ex nihilo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very much learning about my favorite photographers now, but a lot of the original inspirations really came from Tumblr, through online social media websites, through Pinterest. And those people were Larry Clark, Ryan McGinley, people who were depicting youth culture in a very dynamic, sensuous, free, and kind of effortless way. Those were always also the pictures that just seemed to get the most reblogs, which I was very interested in. And that did play a role in my kind of like how I received images, which was scrolling through websites and then ingesting them. A lot of the reblog pictures were honestly Larry Clark, Ryan McGinley, and Petra Collins. And so I think my work, on some level, if you might not see that direct inspiration, but you're kind of loosely seeing like a few steps between that first exposure to Larry Clark and Ryan McGinley, which is a focus on youth culture, a focus on my friends and the people around me, Black life, and essentially this idea that young black people that I'm photographing can be visualized as free, as effortless, intimate, and young.
And I remember our first conversation when we actually met. You mentioned your interest in Black Utopia, and that really is something at the core. And you told me that utopia is a kind of unreachable thing, and you like this idea of playing with the word. And you made this series called Boys of Walthamstow, which was this little video of 5 kids cast on the internet running around, which for you kind of symbolized that feeling of utopia. I've always been very interested in utopia, because when, you know, Ernst Bloch was pushed against the wall by Adorno to finally define what utopia, he said something is missing. And I was kind of, what's your definition, your idea, your interest? And it's good to talk maybe about this Boys of Walthamstow piece, which is very important.
A lot of my work does center on this idea of visualizing or fantasizing what a utopia could be within a photograph for young black men, young black women that I'm photographing. It also does play with these two ideas of, this photograph is kind of, and this series was really about boys kind of frolicking in the landscape of suburban England, Walthamstow marshes. But how does this place kind of become like a vessel for other places? I've seen a lot of people look at this photo and say that it kind of looks like it's in Savannah, Georgia, because of the willow trees. It kind of looks like it's maybe outside somewhere in France. It's a very placeless kind of series, but that within that series, we're visualizing young black men as enjoying leisure time, as enjoying kind of simple pleasure, simple freedoms. So that's, to me, a very simple vision of utopia that I kind of try and enact out in my universe of pictures.
Yes, it's interesting because this idea of freedom, we spoke about it. We did this interview for your first, bigger museum show in Amsterdam, and we talked there about freedom. It's something also Joseph Kudelka addressed a lot in our lunch today when he says, photography is about that freedom. And you said that it hopefully kind of produces reality. So I'm interested in that. The idea how actually we can go beyond representation of that freedom and how art can produce reality. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I think it's always an artist's job to fantasize and allow that fantasy to kind of inform our reality. Also vice versa. It's sometimes art's job to react to our reality. But I think in my work specifically, I can only speak personally. A lot of these images, while they may seem very simple or kind of very beautiful of these young men and women, a lot of them are playing with symbols in fashion, in beauty that I'm interested in around identity that can kind of visualize or fantasize or, as you said, kind of create and bring into reality an image of a young black man, right? Like a lot of these images that I'm kind of creating are questioning what does an American family look like, right? Through fashion, through these protective vests and jumpsuits, through the use of a do-rag, through, this image of a black family, black American family. That is kind of my fantasy, but also we bring that into reality. So.
Now also there is of course this idea of, the reality you kind of create through images, and you told me once that you create your own reality, and that's kind of exactly what Kudelka also said when he said, I'm not into documentation, I want to create my own reality. And you said that you're interested in taking photos to do that, but also because nothing is real anymore and that we rely so much on photos.
Yeah, I think that mainly might have to do with, and I said that in our interview?
Yeah.
That I think that has to do with the fact that I've grown up on the internet with images, but the fact also that we are now kind of living through images of other people, of our friends, the way we allow Instagram to both like compress our ideas of time and space. People are kind of posting stories in different moments in time. So just our relationship to images might have been what I was getting at there. But yeah, I think in creating these images in which I kind of, utilize fashion or symbols of around the body, around family, around black identity, these are kind of, bringing to our reality again through images, a positive kind of light or kind of a sense of play around blackness.
And then, of course, there is another thing which struck me from the beginning when we met, which is the kind of fluidity of practice, in a sense of that, we met in a very interdisciplinary context, to say the least, between a musician and composer, Solange, and then the fashion world, and actually the world of branding, and at the same time also the art world. And your work exists in all these worlds. We are today here at Paris Photo, but we could also easily be at the fashion, conference, or we could easily also be at a conference on social media and talk with you about images in the context of social media. And you navigate these worlds, from a Vogue cover to a museum exhibition in a seemingly seamless way. And I was kind of curious to talk a little bit about this, fluidity of practice. Kind of grew up in the 90s, and of course, one of the first artists in terms of this photography and the fluidity of practice I met in my generation was Wolfgang Tillmans. and he sort of practiced that in a quite strong way. But it seems that it's now even much more extreme, of course, because of technology. And so it would be interesting to hear a little bit about this fluidity of practice. And if you feel a belonging to one of these worlds, or art world, fashion world, photography world, or if you're really in a kind of Camille Brienne way, when Camille Brienne said n'être que entre, to only be in between.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, first off, I was always kind of the person who hopped between different friend groups in high school. Like I was either bored of just sticking in one, or I was just too much of kind of a lone wolf and really wanted to move between the others. And then also you bring up Wolfgang Tillmans. I think some of the people that have inspired me the most, just on a subconscious level, it hasn't even been me seeking out being a multidisciplinary person or me seeking out wanting to do everything and anything. It's actually very, very kind of considered. But Wolfgang Tillmans and Vivian Sasson are two photographers who have really inspired what I'm doing. I mean, those two people have been able to really straddle this line of understanding a commissioned work or understanding a fashion series, but be able to imbue a certain emotional register or personal kind of interest into those things. A lot of these photos, it's a really good mixture of commissioned and personal work. And so I think I try and approach all of that with the same kind of universal lens. Yeah.
And maybe we should talk about music, because I think one of the really connecting elements of today's conversations has been, particularly in the conversation, I would say, with Ming Smith, and also with Joseph, the connection to music, particularly in Ming Smith's work, where that plays such a central role. But Dan Graham once said, we can never understand an artist unless we know what kind of music he or she is listening to. And anyway, we met with Solange, but music plays a very big role. He once told me that, your kind of unrealized project is to do something with Steph Haynes. You have a lot of connection to the music world. Can you tell us about that? Photography, music photography.
Well, first, Ming, can you stand up? Can we applaud for Ming for a second?
A big round of applause for the amazing Ming Smith, who inspires us all.
Thank you, Ming. And, photography and music have always been connected, and you've always known that. And first of all, I was making music videos in my early days, also making skate videos. When I was in Atlanta growing up, a lot of rappers would kind of see my uploads to YouTube that were skate videos, which were very stylized and highly color corrected and all of this, and they would say, would you want to make a music video? And so there was always that crossover. Actually, the first photographer who showed me about shooting on film, analog, was a music photographer who was documenting Skepta, who was documenting Drake, who was documenting, and this is around 2013, 14, and a lot of those guys, early career moments. He came and stayed with me and showed me kind of what he was doing backstage. So I was always watching and learning. I've always had an intersection with music. I did a collaborative project with Solange, photographing her sculptures, and so I'm always more broadly interested in these things. But yeah, I think at this point, those intersections always have to be natural. There always has to be an overlap in what we're interested in. For Solange and I, we've always just been kind of talking, whether that's about movies or whether that's about, images that she really likes. So all those collaborations that I kind of have in music with Kevin Abstract in Brockhampton, with Abra, a young kind of pop singer from Atlanta, all of those collaborations just came out of direct contact with the artist. It was always very immediate, and it always just felt very right.
And of course, there is this unrealized project with Dev Haynes. Is it still unrealized, or has it happened now?
With Dev, we've been talking about, with Dev Hines from Blood Orange, we've been talking about making a music video for years now, it feels like. We have not, it still has not happened. But we want to. We were in the planning stages for one song from his new album. I always feel that Dev Hines makes music that is almost like the music to my visual world, and he's always said, to me, your pictures always sometimes feel like the music I'm trying to make. So we're always talking, but not yet.
And any other unrealized projects outside, photography, music? I was always interested in, unrealized projects. We know a lot about architects' unrealized projects, but we know very little about other practitioners' unrealized projects. And as I mentioned earlier, some projects are too big to realize, others are too small. Then there are, of course, the ones which are censored. And then last but not least, as Doris Lessing always told me, the ones which are self-censored, the ones I think we all have projects we haven't dared yet to do. So I want to hear a little bit more about some of your Andreas projects, of your dreams.
Yeah. I mean, I'd really like to, well, could it be something I'm working on or something that I've kind of...
All of the above. It can be a partially something you're just about to realize, something which is unrealizable. It's a big topic.
Something I'm just about to realize is a body of work of flowers, which is nice. I think a body of work of, but and it's kind of a take on, you know, the great photographers who have done their own kind of take on the floral arrangement, right? Like from Avedon to Mizell to Penn. There's this subgenre of flower photography, if you will, that I'm kind of interested in imbuing my own like emotional response to flowers into. So that is an unrealized project that I've been working on for a while.
A whole other thing is, of course, the campaigns. You're working on campaigns. That's something you know, Jürgen Teller is doing a lot as well. He navigates between kind of exhibitions and campaigns. Very struck by your Marc Jacobs campaign in 2017, for example. Can you tell us a little bit about this idea of the campaigns? Because in the Marc Jacobs campaigns, you played with gender roles. There was a kind of a connection to 90s hip-hop.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I have any of those images in this presentation, but I don't. But I did do a campaign for Marc Jacobs, and I do several, you know, fashion campaigns also, in which I kind of focus on this idea of elevating young black people around me. Casting is very important. A lot of these projects, which are for, you know, high fashion houses, I will cast friends, I will cast through Instagram, I will cast with a very specific eye, and it's with a lot of fortune and also persistence that I'm able to do this, that I'm able to kind of focus in on specifically black and brown bodies wearing high fashion, and to question what does that mean and what stories can be told with that. So with Marc Jacobs, he had made that specifically, he asked me to make a photo series that was responding to his collection in 2015. I don't know if anybody remembers, but he made this really horrible collection that had a lot of models wearing braids and dreads. It was like Kendall Jenner and Gigi Hadid, and these people were wearing braids and dreads. If anyone remembers this fashion show, it was a huge controversy. And I, of course, said no. And he kind of came back, you know, season after season wanting me to photograph. And a year later, I kind of thought this could be a space where there's actually room for maybe some sort of subversion or infiltration, or I started to think, what does it mean to use the language of commerciality, or what does it mean to make legible images, very legible and commercial images, but that might have kind of underneath them an interest in specifically black beauty and black identity. So.
And that topic, of course, also happened a lot, or is very visible in your exhibition. For those of you who haven't seen it, big show at Foam in the Netherlands, and that's, you know, the first time you really bring all the aspects of your practice kind of together through the medium of an exhibition. Many of the photographs we've discussed, campaigns, you know, magazine work is there. But the thing which actually, when I came to your show in Amsterdam, surprised me most is the return to films. You kind of go back to the beginnings because you started with films. And there are these two amazing films. There's The Idyllic Space and Chasing Pink Found Red. And for this latter film, the Idyllic Space, Chasing Pink film Found Red, you actually crowdsourced audio from people on social media platform. And it's, as far as I understand, it's a lot about micro-trauma, sort of micro-trauma, is that the word?
Yeah.
I'm interested in this whole idea, if you can tell us a little bit about this very new way of making a film by sourcing or crowdsourcing.
Yeah, there were, micro-trauma is exactly the word I used for it. There were two films. This installation image is from a film called Idyllic Space, which was in the Foam exhibition, which you came to, and I remember you took a video of this portion of the video on opening night. But this film is essentially a ceiling projected film in which the viewer is meant to lie on beanbags like these people are doing here, and kind of just look up and dream, right? This video is really about young black men in Atlanta, which is where I made the film, enjoying suburban pleasures, and I was suburban leisure time, picnicking, hula hooping, skateboarding, jump roping. And as simple as that may sound, I was really thinking about what does it mean to first lie on the floor and have a group of young black men kind of tower over you and be enjoying themselves. You know, what's that relationship like? But also, I was thinking about how radical it could be just to visualize leisure time in America. I think about Tamir Rice, who was killed enjoying, playing with water guns outside in his neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio. I think about so many other people who aren't able to kind of enjoy these kind of simple pleasures. So this film was that, and then we talk about micro trauma. This film is called Chasing Pink Found Red, which you mentioned, Hans. This film is a triangular 3-screen installation also, which showed at Foam. And essentially, this is footage that I made, again, of a group of park-relaxing black youths, which I filmed in Central Park in New York City. Kind of contrasted with these stories that I crowdsourced. I asked openly on Instagram, also to friends and to family, to send me voice memos. It can be recorded on your phone, recorded on your computer, however you want to do it. Stories in which they felt stifled racially within their life. These stories that I got back over 2.5 hours of footage, or audio rather, which I had to kind of trim down and condense to what made like a sensible narrative. And the stories in this film are really amazing, and I think I focused in on micro trauma because for me, when I asked this open call, I thought about the small moments in which we were reminded of ourselves or kind of made to feel smaller in these very day-to-day ways rather than overt kind of dramatic violent acts, which we often see, in cinema and in film with black folks. So this was about kind of small day-to-day moments that people might not even be aware of. Some people call them microaggressions. I call them micro traumas because they kind of stay with you for years. And I replay this one moment of my friend telling me very innocently that I couldn't, I think it was iMessage this one girl to meet up after a football game in Georgia because she was white and I was black. It was a very small thing that he said that kind of just slipped off his tongue, but stories like this came in over 2.5 hours worth of audio. So,
and the exhibition was called I Can Make You Feel Good, and it's another music connection because it's an 80s soul hit. Now, I promised we would bring this to the present, to the extreme present, and nothing can be more the extreme present than your Zeit magazine issue, which is yet another aspect that you actually do magazines, the whole idea of printed matter. I know, Ming Smith is working on a big book. We talked with Joseph Kudelka about the book. Samuel Foster talked about books. You're, of course, working on books, but also magazines. And it's interesting, in this issue of Zeit magazine, is another wonderful connection to Ming Smith because you pay tribute to Roy de Carrara, who, of course, Ming mentioned and was important for her. Can you tell us about that and why Roy's work is significant for you and what you did with Zeit magazine? And we have to speak faster and faster because this is a countdown. We have 9 minutes left.
Oh, my gosh. So in terms of magazines, I'm very aware of, and I really like to, play, I'll say, in this realm of magazines and magazine photography because, as a lot of famous photographers have said, the image is meant to be disseminated widely. I think pictures are made to be, the invention of photography came from this idea that you could disseminate an image multiple ways rather than a painting which stays very fixed in one place or may move around but doesn't really get spread as widely. Like you were saying, this Zeit magazine issue, which I kind of edited or guest edited, it was their annual photography issue in which I did a great big portfolio of my personal work, but I also spotlighted a photography hero of mine, Roy de Carrara, who, as I kind of study him more and more, I heard about him first a couple years ago through Khalil Joseph, filmmaker, and also, no, he doesn't do photography, but filmmaker, music video director, and many other things. He cites Roy as a big inspiration in his film Flypaper, and so anyway, I went down the whole of research, and Roy's general interest in the mundane, right, the everyday, how he depicts kind of daily life in New York City. For me and Harlem Families, again, he has this photo called Bill and Son, which is a very simple image of a father holding his son very closely around his son's waist. These images of family for me were like kind of encouragement to kind of redefine and kind of bring together this visual text of hope with my friends. So when I spotlighted him, we put together a layout of his images, and then I worked with his estate, which was really amazing, and they kind of were okay with me kind of spotlighting and talking about him and mentioning how much of a reference point he is for me, and he very much is. So
One thing I was curious is because you have your practice has exploded in such an incredible way in the last couple of months, and how many projects are you working on right now at the same time? And can you give us just a range? I was curious about, we imagine all we are now in your studio in New York City, and what's going on.
Well, my studio right now is my living room, so that's a great truth. I've always really liked being a bit of a bedroom artist or an apartment artist. My apartment in Bed-Stuy is where I currently live and work. My dad had a small business in our basement growing up in Atlanta, Georgia. That's where he started until he moved out and actually got an office space nearby. So that's actually what I'm doing. I'm finally getting a studio, Hans, which is very exciting. And I'll be able to have my own space to kind of create and work on these ideas. But at any one time, it is a lot of projects. And I'm definitely maybe almost constantly on the verge of a breakdown. No, but really, I'm currently working on at any given time 2 to 3 fashion commission projects, which I really love to keep that part of my practice going. I think I call it like a paid internship. I'm able to really travel, use new equipment, try new things with image making. I'm only 24 years old, so this is a really nice playground to meet new people, to get out into the world and essentially, learn. And then off the back of those, I try and continue my personal work, doing a personal picture here and there, or working on a new body of work. So for next year, I am working on some books, which I won't say much about, but I'm trying to self-publish one book, and then I'm publishing with Prestel, publisher in Germany, another book, and then also continuing, as many institutional things as I can manage at one time.
I just went through all my notes, and I was thinking, we've covered a lot of ground. It's been very exciting. I've looked, have I missed out on something? And I think it would be kind of great to hear, maybe to end the conversation, the amazing story of the Vogue cover.
Well, let me go to the image first. We don't have the cover here, but we have this.
You have the image, right?
We have this.
You have the one with Grace Wells-Bonner?
No, I wish I did put it in this.
Yeah.
This was more all the work that I included in foam. But this will end here. This commission, which I think came by no accident, but also thanks to so many pioneers in image making, be that Ming, be that Gordon Parks, be that Roy de Carava, and so on. So many people have worked tirelessly to kind of push boundaries within fashion. I had been doing kind of, again, politically engaged work, work connected to music, work loosely connected to fashion with Marc Jacobs, and kind of all of those intersected with this one commission of Beyonce for Vogue September issue last year. I got the call from Vogue a little while after doing a cover for Teen Vogue, actually, which was photographing the survivors of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting in Parkland. And so essentially after doing that and photographing Emma Gonzalez for that assignment, the creative director of Vogue called me and said, would you like to, we have a very secretive project, of course he said, and would you like to photograph Beyonce for the cover of our September issue? And I mean, at that moment I remember thinking, on one end of my brain I was thinking, I'm the exact right person to be doing this, and I kind of felt so confident, and I felt a rush of knowing that the small decisions that I'd made up to this point led me to this ask. And I really do believe that that's true, but also I almost didn't believe it was real as well. I was wanting to kind of secure all the details and make sure that it was going to happen. And from there, the shoot came alive. We were looking a lot at, in terms of the visuals of the shoot, we were looking a lot at, and she and I were interested in doing something that felt very much like my other pictures, something that felt very stripped back, that felt very intimate, that felt very kind of effortless as like, what is that, $500,000 worth of diamonds around someone's neck can be. But really, I think this is both a Beyonce that we haven't seen before, but also she really stepped into my world of pictures, which was what made the collaboration so great in such a moment of photo history, was that this collaboration was truly like this. It was really a gelling of all the different inspirations. How can we tie fashion into identity? How can you see the references made to floral headpieces. In the other images, you see my collaboration with young Jamaican British designer Grace Wales Bonner. How can we bring all these things together into one fashion editorial? And that was, again, we were looking at images of working black women, references to the proverbial laundry line, which made its way onto the cover when she's in a kind of Pan-African colored dress. These were all very, deeply layered references that came from research I was doing for months. So.
And how was the collaboration? How was the dialogue?
It was incredible, truly. She is one of the greatest for a reason, and she is very much open to kind of changing and shifting and working and making work what needs to happen for the best picture. She's very understanding of that, and I think also, I kind of also say this: the vibe on set. As soon as I kind of walked onto the shoot, we shot this in the countryside of England. The vibe on set was immediately very warm. Her team and her publicist, specifically Yvette, who is more like a mother figure to me, was immediately very motherly and was even going as far as tossing around ideas of her and I being in conversation as the editorial part of the interview for the magazine. So that was off the bat. So I was a bit like, all right, this is going to go great. Because they were so warm and open. There weren't any closed doors, and that's how I very much like to work. So.
Of course, also something incredible to be in a photo shoot with you, because we all didn't know you when we met in this photo shoot, and we felt all energized for days. I have very seldomly experienced that, because usually, to do a photo shoot can be quite exhausting, and there are very few exceptions. For example, to work with Jürgen Teller is always a highly energizing experience. It's the same with you. What's the secret? Why is it so energizing when you photograph? I was wondering.
That's a great question, and I think also when I reference meeting you, and this tends to be the vibe we try and just create on set. It's something vibrationally that I can't quite explain. Somebody said you just have this very specific energy when you're photographing people that I'm probably not even aware of. But when we were taking pictures and kind of between pictures and we were talking, I'm serious, I didn't know that you were working with Arthur Jaffa. But at the time I brought him up because I was like, this is the most exciting artist in the art world to me, and I knew you were in the art world. But to be completely honest, Hans, February of 2018, Tyler Mitchell didn't know a lot about the art world. Seriously. So what are we? November 2019. Tyler Mitchell still doesn't know a lot about the art world. So really, I said, I really like this artist, Arthur Jaffa. Have you heard of him? And of course, you kind of roll your eyes. You're like, yeah, we have a show of his like right now at Serpentine Galleries. Or not right now. You said, we're opening a show of his in Berlin at Julia Stoschek Collection. Come to Berlin on Saturday, you said. And then I showed up. I said, well, I'm going to follow this yellow brick road.
Tyler, thank you so much. A big round of applause for Tyler Mitchell. Thank you so much. Thank you. And please give another very big round of applause for Ming, for Joseph, for Samuel, and for Tyler. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here. Thanks to Paris Photo. Thank you.